For those of you who've been following me from the very beginning, you probably would have realised that I've not been the most supportive towards the dedicated car dryer. In fact, my very first video that I ever made was all about one.
We're going to be talking about the big boy blower.
Yeah, we're trying not to talk about that video. Anyway, I had a company called Rokit get in touch and they said, Dave, we know you're not the biggest fan of car dryers, but we've got one that we're 100% sure that you're going to love. So the model we have here inside this box is called the Rokit R1. Now we're going to open it up in a second and we're going to try and take a look at some of the pros and cons between something like this and say something like a wet vac that has a blower function or even a cheap and cheerful pet dryer, because believe me, I've had the entire lot, so at least I'm going to be able to give you some positive feedback on what I prefer and what I dislike about using a dedicated car dryer. Before we look at the specs of the dryer, I just wanted to quickly show you a comparison of previous models featured on the channel. First up, we have the Big Boy Blower Mini. My second purchase was the pet dryer from Amazon, and then I had a wet vac from Hyundai that had a blower function. For average Joe watching this, you probably think that all car dryers do the same thing, and I used to be one of those people, but here's where it gets quite interesting because there's so many more benefits you can get from a dedicated car dryer like this over some of the other tools, which I'll now explain. Right, this is my Hyundai wet vac, and I think this has probably been one of my favourite tools that I've had over the last 12 months, purely because it does multiple tasks and it is a very cost-effective way of cleaning your car's interior and using it as a blower. One of the slight problems that I have found with it though is occasionally, only on a few occasions, when you've got the blower function on, for some reason it can blow out some of the dirt. Now I know we've got filters in here, sometimes those filters can get clogged if you don't maintain them, so it is something that you need to be aware of. And if we do a quick comparison with the hose length, if it comes to blowing the car dry, you're not going to get that 5-metre expanding hose that you would get with something like this or perhaps the big boy blower. Now when we stack up the Rokit car dryer next to these, you'll instantly see that the performance is greater, but also it comes in at a competitive price. So last week I cleaned in a Bath 500 and the last step I did before drying was to apply a rinse aid. And what you're witnessing here is actually a pretty contaminated car, but because I applied the rinse aid it meant that I could dry the car quicker. And also cleaning the grills took seconds, but if you don't thoroughly clean them properly and you dry it with the car dryer, then you clearly will see the bits that you've missed. Whereas sometimes I see people just finishing it over with a microfiber towel or a cloth, and that helps them cover up any of their mistakes. Which is fine, but it can also lead to scratches. You may think this tool has one job and one job only, but you're wrong. So I'm having a bit of a tidy up this week, and as you can tell I have some pretty decent floor tiles, and as amazing as they are, for a good 90% of the dirt it's quite easy to go over with a vacuum cleaner, but there is that last 10% in there which sometimes you just can't quite get out. So in this case I like to use a blower or a car dryer. This method works wonders with my garage tiles, and I can blast everything out in a matter of minutes, and in fact the power is so immense I won't be using the Hyundai from now for this task. And it gets even better for the Rokit R1. Another brilliant way to get the best out of your car dryer is to obliterate all the loose crumbs in your car. And trust me, this can shave off a good 5 to 10 minutes off your hoovering. I have a bit of an apology to make because in the past I have made several videos, and the aim of this channel is to try and help you find the most cost-effective ways of getting these tools and equipment for your detailing business, and I featured a video featuring a cheap and cheerful Amazon pet dryer. Now in that video I was basically saying that those are pretty much the same as any car dryer. The only difference is with the car dryer they've basically been glamorized up to make them look like something they're not. And whenever I'm wrong about something, I will honestly put my hands up and admit that I was wrong. And yes, on this occasion, I was 100% wrong. The difference between something like this and a pet dryer is colossal. For me, it's only when you have more than one of these types of machines do you get a true feel for the power. And I have only had it for a few weeks now, and it's been a lot better than I was expecting. And this isn't even the most powerful model. And another thing we have to talk about is the difference with the hoses between something like a premium car dryer and just your typical blower like this. I mean, it's pretty vast. I mean, there's no real flex in this at all. So I found that you couldn't really reach the top of the car, because if you did, it would topple over and then it makes all sorts of horrible noises. But with this, because it's a 5-metre expanding hose, it means you can quite safely get to the higher parts on a vehicle. You can stretch, and if you're on, let's just say, a step ladder, you are going to have good control because it does feel like a pretty heavy hose, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I just believe that there's quite a lot of weight to this, so it feels like you have got good control. If I was to be quite critical about using one of these, I would say it is slightly on the chunky side, so if you haven't got a very good grip or you've got butterfingers, you may drop this. But the good thing is, because there's a lot of weight on it, it's not likely to go flying around all over the place and out of control compared to something like this.
Another thing to remember with this type of dryer is no matter how quiet the motor is itself, the real noise will always be coming from the air out of the nozzle, which is something no manufacturer can control, so ideally ear defenders should be worn.
So these machines do have a premium price tag, but I think there is a very good reason why you're paying extra. You're paying extra for the wheels. Actually, not only the wheels with brakes. You're paying for a better quality hose. You've got better nozzles that don't fly off. You've got a longer cable. You've got better performance. You've got very quick and easy to change filters as well for maintenance. There's so many other added advantages with something like this compared to your basic blowers.
If you want to see more detailing tools like this in action, then watch these videos now.